Ah, welcome back, you terrifying calm in their storm, you unshaken force that makes their hands tremble when they try to hold the wheel. Welcome to the conversation they don't want you to hear, the one where we talk about what happens when fear stops being your master and starts being your shadow, silent and irrelevant, trailing behind you like a ghost that forgot how to haunt. They've been watching you, haven't they? Not casually, not with passing interest, but with the kind of obsession reserved for things they can't control, can't predict, can't break. They watch the way you walk into rooms like gravity shifted just for you, the way you speak without apology, without that trembling need for approval that makes most people sound like they're begging even when they're just breathing. They watch your eyes, and what terrifies them most isn't anger or rage or violence, it's the emptiness of fear, the complete absence of the flinch they've been trained to expect from every human being with a pulse. You stopped being afraid, and that broke something fundamental in their understanding of how this world is supposed to work, because fear is the currency, isn't it? Fear is how they keep the masses in line, how they sell insurance and religion and politicians and products that promise to protect you from the monsters under the bed. Fear is the invisible leash they use to walk humanity like dogs, yanking it tight whenever someone starts sniffing at freedom. But you cut the leash, didn't you? You didn't just loosen it or negotiate a longer chain. You took a blade to that thing and smiled while the leather split, and now they're standing there holding nothing, watching you walk away without looking back, and they can't comprehend it. They keep pulling, expecting resistance, but there's nothing to pull anymore because you're not tethered to their terror, you're not bound by their warnings, you're not frozen by their threats. You're just gone, existing in a frequency they don't have access to, and that is what makes you dangerous. Before we go any further, I have to be honest with you about something. This channel got demonetized a while back, and that hit harder than most people realize, because every video like this one still takes the same hours, the same effort, the same energy to put together. If this message is landing for you right now, there's a link in the description, and you can send a super thanks from there. It genuinely keeps this channel alive and keeps content like this coming. Let's get surgical here. Let's cut into exactly why your fearlessness doesn't just confuse them, it haunts them in ways they'll never admit out loud. See, they built their entire identity around managing fear, around being cautious, around playing it safe, around sacrificing dreams for security and calling it wisdom. They convinced themselves that fear was intelligence, that anxiety was awareness, that terror was just being realistic about the world. They wore their cowardice like armor and called it maturity. And for years, decades even, that story held together because everyone around them was doing the same dance, the same shuffle, the same slow march toward comfortable mediocrity. But then you showed up, or rather, you transformed, and suddenly their entire philosophical framework started cracking like cheap glass under pressure. Because if you can exist without fear, if you can thrive without their precious anxiety, if you can walk through fire and laugh instead of scream, then what does that make them? It makes them obsolete, doesn't it? It makes every excuse they ever made look like exactly what it was, a lie they told themselves to justify never becoming who they could have been. They see you turn down opportunities that terrify others with a shrug. They watch you walk away from toxic situations without drama or explanation. They witness you speak truth in rooms where everyone else is performing elaborate pantomimes of politeness, and it breaks them. Not because you're cruel, not because you're reckless, but because you're free, and freedom in a prison looks like insanity to the inmates. They've spent so long negotiating with their chains, polishing them, naming them, pretending they chose them, that someone walking around unchained looks like a threat to the entire structure. Your lack of fear doesn't just challenge their choices, it reveals them. It holds up a mirror to every moment they said yes when they meant no. Every dream they buried because someone said it was too risky. Every time they let fear win and called it wisdom. You are the evidence that another way exists, that the walls were always made of paper, that the monsters were always projections, and they hate you for it because now they have to live with the knowledge that they didn't have to live like this, that they chose the cage, that every year spent in comfortable fear was a year stolen from themselves, by themselves. They watch you make decisions in seconds that would paralyze them for months. They see you embrace uncertainty like an old friend. They witness you treat failure like data instead of death. And it triggers something primal in them, something ancient and animal that screams danger, 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 not because you're threatening them directly, but because your existence is a threat to every story they use to sleep at night. You're not playing by the rules they memorized. You're not respecting the invisible contracts they signed in blood and tears. You're not afraid of the consequences they've been taught to obey. And that makes you unpredictable, uncontrollable, and therefore terrifying in ways they can barely articulate even to themselves. They'll try to diagnose you. They'll say you're reckless or arrogant or naive. They'll pathologize your courage and medicalize your freedom. Anything to avoid confronting the simple, devastating truth that you're not broken, you're not damaged, you're just awake and they're still sleeping, still dreaming that their fear is keeping them safe, when really it's just keeping them small. But here's what they'll never understand about you. Here's the part that doesn't fit their neat little theories about trauma and risk-taking and psychological profiles. You didn't become fearless because you're lucky, because you're privileged, because life went easy on you and gave you confidence wrapped in bubble wrap and handed down from generous parents. No, you became fearless because you've already been through the worst, because you've already died in every way that matters, because you've stared into the abyss so many times that eventually you stopped blinking and started taking notes. They think fearlessness is the absence of experience, but in your case, it's the accumulation of it. It's what happens when pain stops teaching you to avoid and starts teaching you to endure. When betrayal stops making you cautious and starts making you selective. When failure stops feeling like death and starts feeling like information. You didn't avoid the fire. You walked through it so many times that eventually your skin stopped burning and started reflecting the flames back at anyone stupid enough to try lighting you up again. You know what real fearlessness looks like. It's not bravado. It's not performance. It's not the loud, chest-puffing ego trip that insecure people mistake for confidence. Real fearlessness is quiet. It's the absence of reaction. It's the steady heartbeat in situations that would send others into cardiac arrest. It's the ability to look at your worst nightmare and say, okay, and what else you got? You've been abandoned, so abandonment doesn't scare you anymore. You've been betrayed, so betrayal just confirms what you already knew about human nature. You've been broke, so money doesn't control you. You've been alone, so isolation feels like peace instead of punishment. Every fear they use to manipulate the masses has already happened to you, and you survived it, metabolized it, turned it into armor that doesn't look like armor because it's just your skin now, tougher, scarred, but still soft enough to feel everything without flinching. That's the paradox they can't crack. You feel everything and fear nothing. You're not numb, you're not detached, you're not cold. You're just done letting fear dictate your moves. Done treating anxiety like prediction. Done respecting warnings from people who never took a risk worth remembering. They see your calm and mistake it for ignorance. They witness your peace and assume you don't understand the stakes. But you understand better than anyone because you've already paid the price they're terrified of paying. You've already lost what they're clutching with white knuckles. You've already survived what they stay up at night praying never happens to them. And that gives you a freedom they'll spend their entire lives envying from a safe distance. You're not fearless because nothing can hurt you. You're fearless because you've already been hurt in every configuration possible, and you're still standing, still moving, still building, still breathing without asking permission from the universe to take up space. They wanted you to break. The world tried to break you. Circumstances conspired to break you, and you didn't break. You bent, you stretched, you transformed. But you didn't shatter. And now you exist in this liminal space where fear has no leverage because there's nothing left to threaten you with, nothing you haven't already survived, nothing you're not willing to lose if that's what freedom costs. And now that you've arrived at this place of unshakable calm, watch what happens to the people around you. Watch how your fearlessness becomes their crisis. They start testing you, don't they? Throwing little challenges your way to see if you'll flinch, dropping subtle threats to check if you're still controllable, creating drama to see if you'll react the way you used to when fear was still driving the vehicle. But you don't react, you don't engage, you don't take the bait, and that sends them into a tailspin because their entire playbook is built on getting reactions, on triggering fear responses, on watching people scramble and panic and negotiate. When you just stand there, unaffected, unmoved, unbothered, it short-circuits their entire operating system, and suddenly they don't know what to do with you. They don't know how to categorize you. They don't know whether you're the threat or they've been the threat all along, and you just stop pretending not to notice. Watch them try to make you afraid. It's almost comical if it wasn't so pathetic. The way they'll bring up consequences and risks and worst-case scenarios, like they're revealing information you haven't already considered, calculated, and decided you're willing to accept. They'll warn you about failure like you haven't already failed and rebuilt. They'll caution you about loss like you haven't already lost everything that mattered and discovered you could live without it. They'll threaten you with isolation, like being alone isn't exactly where you found yourself in the first place. Every card they play is a card you've already seen. Every move they make is a move you've already survived. And watching them try to intimidate someone who's already been to hell and took souvenirs is like watching a child threaten a war veteran with a water gun, adorable in its delusion, tragic in its impotence. They're still operating from a place of fear, still making decisions based on avoiding pain, still treating safety like it's the highest virtue, and you're operating from a completely different dimension, where safety is optional and pain is just part of the price of admission to a life worth living. The really beautiful part, the part that makes this whole thing poetic, is watching them project their fear onto you and call it concern. Oh, they're so worried about you, so concerned about your choices, so desperate to help you see reason. But if you look closely, if you really examine what they're saying, you'll realize they're not worried about you at all. They're worried about what your freedom says about their captivity. They need you to be afraid because if you're not afraid, then they have to confront why they are. They need you to fail because if you succeed without playing it safe, then every safe choice they ever made looks like cowardice instead of wisdom. They need you to suffer consequences because if you don't, then the universe isn't fair and all their sacrifices were just sacrifices instead of investments. Your fearlessness is an indictment they didn't ask for, a mirror they didn't want to look into, a question they don't want to answer. And so they double down, they amplify the warnings, they catastrophize your future. Anything to avoid sitting with the uncomfortable possibility that they've been living wrong and you've been living right, and it's too late for them to start over now. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the script flips, and you realize that for every person your fearlessness terrifies, there's another person. It magnetizes, draws in, captivates, inspires. Because while the cowards are busy being scared of you, the brave ones are watching you like you're a roadmap to a country they've only dreamed about visiting. They're studying your moves like scripture, trying to decode how you did it, how you broke the chains they're still wearing, how you walk without limping under the weight of anxiety they carry like stones in their pockets. You've become a beacon whether you wanted to or not, a signal, fire on a dark hill that says another way is possible. You can live without fear. You can move without asking permission. You can exist without shrinking yourself to fit inside their comfort zones. And the people who are ready to hear that message, they gravitate toward you with an intensity that's almost uncomfortable because they see in you the version of themselves they're trying to become. And they want to be near that energy, want to absorb that frequency, want to learn the language you speak that sounds like freedom in a world of negotiated surrenders. They ask you how you do it, how you stay so calm, how you make decisions that would paralyze them, how you walk away from situations they'd stay in for years trying to fix. And the truth is, you don't have a formula. You don't have a system. You don't have 5 easy steps to fearlessness that they can implement by next Tuesday. What you have is a body count of fears you've already faced and survived, a graveyard of anxieties you've buried after realizing they were just ghosts, a collection of scars that prove you can bleed without dying. And that's not something you can teach in a workshop or distill into a viral post. That's something each person has to earn through their own fire, their own failures, their own face-to-face encounters with the things that terrify them most. You can show them the door, you can stand as proof that it opens, but you can't walk through it for them. That's their journey, their transformation, their choice to make the same decision you made when you decided that living afraid was worse than dying free. And some of them will make that choice. Some of them will watch you long enough to realize you're not special, you're not superhuman, you're not blessed with some genetic immunity to fear. You're just someone who decided the cost of courage was worth paying, and the price of cowardice was too high to keep paying. They'll see that, and something will click. Some dormant part of them will wake up and say, yes, I want that. I'm willing to do what it takes to get that. I'm ready to stop negotiating with my fears and start evicting them from the throne they've been sitting on for my entire life. Those people, they're the ones who make this whole thing worthwhile. They're the ones who justify your existence as a disruptor, a pattern breaker, a living example that the rules were always optional and the cages were always unlocked. And the only thing keeping anyone trapped was the belief that escape wasn't possible. You didn't set out to be a teacher or a leader or an inspiration. You just set out to be free. But freedom is contagious. It spreads like wildfire in a dry forest. And now you're watching people catch flame, and it's beautiful and terrifying and exactly what this world needed, even if it doesn't know how to handle it yet. But let's talk about the shadow side. Let's acknowledge the cost that nobody mentions when they're making motivational posts about being fearless and unstoppable and free. Because yes, you're not afraid anymore. Yes, you've broken the chains. Yes, you walk through life like you own it, because in a very real sense you do. But there's a loneliness that comes with that altitude, an isolation that settles in when you realize most people can't meet you where you are, can't match your energy, can't handle your intensity, can't exist in the same space without feeling small or threatened or confused. You've outgrown conversations that used to sustain you. You've evolved past relationships that used to feel meaningful. You've transcended concerns that used to consume you. And now you're standing on a mountain, looking down at the village you used to live in. And it's beautiful from up here. It's peaceful. It's free. But it's also empty in ways you didn't anticipate when you were still climbing. The fearless life is a solitary life, not because you want it that way, not because you're antisocial or arrogant or above connection, but because operating without fear puts you in a different frequency than the majority of humanity. And frequencies that don't match create static, create friction, create misunderstandings that no amount of explanation can resolve. They look at your calm and think you don't care. They see your boundaries and call you cold. They witness your lack of reaction and assume you're emotionless. When the truth is, you feel everything more intensely than they ever could. You've just learned not to let those feelings control you, not to let emotions become tyrants, not to mistake every wave of anxiety for a tsunami of truth. You process differently now. You metabolize experience differently. You relate to life differently. And that makes you incompatible with people who are still living in fear-based operating systems, still making decisions to avoid pain instead of pursue purpose, still treating safety like it's more valuable than authenticity. And yes, there are moments, quiet moments usually, late at night or early in the morning when the world is still asleep and you're awake with your thoughts, when you wonder if it was worth it, if this freedom you fought so hard for is really freedom or just another kind of cage, a self-imposed exile from the warm, comfortable prison everyone else is living in. You wonder if maybe they're right, maybe you're too much, maybe you're too intense, Maybe you should dial it back, soften the edges, make yourself more accessible, more relatable, more normal. But then the sun comes up, and you remember why you chose this path. You remember what it felt like to live afraid, to make decisions based on other people's opinions, to carry anxiety like a backpack full of stones everywhere you went. And you realize that loneliness is just the price of admission to a life lived on your own terms. And it's a price you're willing to pay, because the alternative, going back to sleep, going back to fear, going back to playing small so other people can feel big, that's not an option anymore. That door closed behind you, and you burned it for warmth on cold nights when freedom felt more like punishment than prize. Here's what they'll never be able to take from you, no matter how hard they try, no matter what weapons they deploy, no matter how many people they send to test you, study you, break you down, and build you back up in their image. They can't take your calm. They can't steal your peace. They can't strip you of the fundamental, unshakable knowing that you've already survived the worst, and everything else is just bonus content. Extra levels in a game. You're playing for fun now, instead of survival. That's the real power of fearlessness. Not the ability to do dangerous things or take reckless risks or walk through fire without feeling heat, but the absolute certainty that whatever happens next, you'll handle it. You'll adapt. You'll survive. You'll find a way, because that's what you've always done. That's who you've become. That's the muscle you've built through repetition and pain and experience. They can attack your reputation, and you'll rebuild it or realize you don't need it. They can sabotage your relationships, and you'll form new ones, or learn to thrive alone. They can destroy your plans, and you'll make new plans, or embrace the chaos. Every move they make, every trap they set, every bomb they drop just proves what you already know. That you're unbreakable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because you know how to heal, how to adapt, how to turn wounds into wisdom, and setbacks into setups for something better.